Okay, folks, so the long overdue analysis of the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock by T.S. Eliot begins here. It's going to take a while. It's one of the great poems. I was reluctant to even record on it because I think students get lost in these kinds of poems, but it is one of the great poems and it's worth my time and effort. I'm beginning not by looking at the poem, but by looking at this document. It's quite long, actually, if you look at it. I've got loads and loads and loads of kind of analytical paragraphs written about Eliot. There's the first one is on vividly drawn characters. Second one is on the same thing. So I'm going on. Then we have this description of a dreary, soulless urban landscape. The philosophical quality, the bleak view of human existence. So I think if I was doing Eliot and you were in my class, my starting point would be that document. It's quite long. There are thousands of words of hopefully thoughtful and thought-provoking analysis in it. And the reason I'd like you to have a look at that is because I think it'll give you a better shape of what you could use and what you need to know about Eliot in order to answer questions. It's important to remember he's only been on the Leaving Cert once, and that was in 2016. And in that question that came up in 2016, we were asked to comment on or to respond to the following statement. Eliot frequently creates memorable characters and dramatic settings to convey both his search for meaning in life and his sense of disillusionment. And that last part is key. If you look at the first three parts of that question, that could be Boland, that could be Patrick Kavanagh, could be Derek Mahan, could be, any poet. If you look at dramatic settings, again, you're looking at Dickinson, Platt. You're looking at the three poets I already mentioned. To bring places to life. This is typical of a lot of poets. And they're all thinking about the meaning of life. They're all looking at, different aspects of life and being philosophical. The thing that Eliot is most associated with is this sense of disillusionment with the world, this world-weary quality. And nowhere is that more evident. And by the way, I don't believe that's the case across all of his poetry. I don't think, in other words, I think it's a blanket statement that would need to be challenged by an interesting answer. But certainly, you can see when they're writing that question, they're thinking of Eliot as a narrative poet. And I suppose that's the first thing I would have in my mind when I think about the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. It is really quite an extraordinary poem. It is not in any way easy, but it is brilliant. And I'm just going to walk through now my note on it. And I'm going to do this, I think, probably across 4, could even be 5 videos. I'm just going to keep an eye on how long each one is because I'm conscious of the fact that this could be difficult for you. Okay, so the poem opens with an epigraph. And an epigraph is a short quotation that you put at the beginning. If you open if you open an essay with a quote, that's an epigraph. And it's designed to kind of give the reader a sense of what the following piece of writing will, the thematic concerns, what it's about. And the epigraph that the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock begins with is from Dante's Inferno, which makes it a literary illusion. And straight away, the challenging quality of reading an Eliot poem is clear. Like, you have to get this clear. If I can be really kind of almost prosaic, Eliot, when you read an Eliot poem, you're operating on a kind of a different intellectual level than any of the other poets that we're looking at. He was an intellectual. So his learning, and one of the reasons that people don't like his poetry, and I get it, is because it's not accessible. It's not accessible in the way that and this is in no way to demean, in fact, the exact opposite. But if you read someone like Boland or Mahan, their work is accessible. There's substance under the surface. You have to delve down, and there's loads of interesting things going on. But you can generally understand, elements of the poems from the initial reading. That is certainly not the case often with Eliot. So when he opens with this literary illusion, and it's not even written in English, it's written in kind of medieval Italian, straight away that's off-putting. But in a positive way, it's challenging. The allusion, the reference from Dante's Inferno, refers to the difference between what we present to the world and what's going on under the surface. And I think that if you get that, then that's a great starting point for looking at the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. This poem is an extended soliloquy. It is the internal monologue, that's what soliloquy is, of a man who is struggling with the bland realities and disappointments of life. Eliot is not an idealist. He is somebody who has a heightened awareness of the mundanity, the banality, the disappointment of life, of how the idealism and the dreams of youth and childhood are often not realized in adult existence. So this is an exploration of that. See, I've lost you already, haven't I? Okay. So the opening sequence, monologue, dialogue, it's an internal monologue, like a soliloquy, where Prufrock is talking to himself, setting out on a journey, and he's going off. He thinks he might ask someone to marry him. So we have characters and we have a scenario. The tone does not suggest happiness or anticipation. If you're going to ask somebody to marry you, you think that there'd be an uplifting tone. There is none. There's a sadness to the voice. There's a bleak quality to the language. Simile is used in an original and innovative way. He's going on this journey and he's kind of urging himself to go. It's very measured rhyming. Let us go then, you and I. So you and I, he's talking to himself. There's your internal monologue straight away, the soliloquy quality. When the evening is spread out against the sky, beautiful imagery. But then the simile, like a patient etherized upon a table. Now that's a really unusual comparison. Ether is a drug. It's designed, it's an anesthetic. So the patient has been drugged, he's out of it. And when you're out of it, you're lifeless. There's an ennui. You know that word, ennui? Like a lack of energy. A sense of the world being an unexciting and unexceptional and boring place. So that tone that rather bleak, I'll use that word a lot in this poem, is established from the very beginning. But on its own, what an interesting use of language that is. Like a patient the evening is spread out against the sky, like a patient etherized upon a table. And for me, it's that striking quality, that striking originality of it. I'm going to get excited now already. I'm thinking about this. That striking originality of Eliot's imagery, which can really grab you, challenge you, make you think. Let us go. So look, we have 1, we have 2, through certain half-deserted streets, the muttering retreats of restless nights in one-night cheap hotels, sawdust restaurants with oyster shells, streets that follow like a tedious argument of insidious intent to lead you to an overwhelming question. Oh, do not ask what is it. Let us go and make our visit. I mean, it's so good. I sometimes struggle to explain why it's so good. I love this part here anyway. Let's do the simple things, okay? So he's creating anticipation. He's creating curiosity. The voice is urging himself. Let us go, let us go. Repetition. Urging himself to go off and do whatever this thing is he wants to do. This thing which is overwhelming him. The overwhelming question is the proposal of marriage, but also you get the sense that there's something more than that he's overwhelmed by life, that he's struggling to cope with the reality of existence. And there's all this just bleak urban imagery. There's, sawdust restaurants, cheap, restaurants where sawdust is thrown on the floor to absorb the dirt. These piles of oyster shells, this image of, consumption, mindless consumption. The one night cheap hotels. There's a seedy quality to the world in which this speaker exists. There's an absence of beauty. There's a bleak. I keep on using that word. I'm going to use that word all the way through. There's a bleak, unattractive reality to the world that Prufrock inhabits. So the opening is brilliant. It's got those two similes. The evening is spread out against the sky like a patient etherized upon a table, and streets that follow. Yeah, sorry, I never mentioned it. Streets that follow like a tedious argument. I'm not suggesting you learn that one, by the way. Streets that follow like a tedious argument of insidious intent. I mean, you got the sibilants, streets, tedious, insidious. But then you have, how can streets be like a tedious argument of insidious intent? What the hell does that even mean? Insidious creates a sense of threats, of danger. If something is insidious, it's malevolent, it's looking to cause harm, but it's hidden. There's a sense that, you're aware of danger around you, so you can't relax. The world is an uncomfortable place. There's an argument, but it's a tedious argument. It's boring. It's boring to live in this world where everything is unsettling, where there is no beauty, that there's, sawdust restaurants and one night cheap hotels. This character's experience of life has worn him down. So instead of being excited by this question he's going to ask, he's dreading it. He's forcing himself to go, and he doesn't really know why he's going. So you've got this tremendously interesting character. You've got this scenario this little scene which, draws us into the world of Prufrock. And we want to know more. So when I mark things there, I'm saying, look, and again, when you look at these poems, these longer poems, I don't really tend to teach them. Some of the best poems on the course, a disused shed in County Wexford is a good example of it. This is another good example. The Kavanagh's famine poem, which The Great Hunger. I tend not to teach those poems because I think students they fail to realise that you don't have to know everything, and they overwrite on them, and they end up telling the story instead of reaching into them and picking out examples which could allow them to make interesting points. And I'm only doing this because, first of all, it's one of the greatest poems I've written, but also I've had requests to do it. So there's loads to say just there on its own. For me, that's a poem. That's the thing about this poem and The Wasteland. You can take, it's like you can take clips out of it. Is that what it's called? When the internet people do that, and just take a bit of it and go, okay, that stands on its own. So I'm going to do a little bit more, and then I'm going to stop this one, and we'll do the next one in afterwards. So we then get this famous must-learn line, which is the refrain of the poem. A refrain is a repeated line, kind of like a chorus. And it's written in a particular style, so it's a couplet, it's a rhyming couplet, so it breaks with the rhyming scheme of what's gone before. And the line is, in the room the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. So good. What does it mean? Again, we don't know, and I can only speculate, but and please don't use this language when you're writing, and don't use this language when you're writing, but that sense that a lot of people are shit talkers. That sense that people tend to pretend to be something that they're not because they want to create a particular impression, because they don't want you to really know who they are, or they think that who they are is not good enough, so they put on a facade. That's what this is about. Michelangelo is one of the greatest artists ever to have drawn breath. He's a symbol of of humanity's capacity for greatness, achievement, momentous, and long-lasting. Michelangelo is associated famously. If I say to you Michelangelo, I'm sure you think the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. For me, it's the Pieta. I've seen it in real. If you've ever been to the Vatican, you'd have seen the Pieta in real life, and it is an amazing piece of sculpture. Just amazing. So Michelangelo symbolises our capacity for greatness. But in the world that Prufrock lives in, and the world that me and you live in, most of us are not Michelangelo. Most of us are not special. We don't achieve anything. We don't leave anything behind us of any moment. We are not remembered after we go. And all we do is talk about people who are great. So that line, in the room the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo, it's always for me resonated with the idea of, I think I have the word here somewhere. Yeah, the superficiality of the world. And the fact that most of us, all we do is talk, and that we don't really achieve. Michelangelo did something with his life, something remarkable and admirable. Prufrock is thinking about, his life and the lives of others. And he's contrasting the banality. That's the second time I've used that word, so I'm going to write it down. The other word I used there was mundanity. Both of those words mean unexceptional. Reality of most of our lives. Like, what are we doing every day when we get up? Going through the motions. What are we achieving? What are we contributing? And these are the questions that you can't help but think when you read this poem. So that's the end of the first video. And there's going to be a few. It's a great opening to the poem. You have that literary allusion, which communicates, the sense that the poem is going to be very thoughtful about the meaning of life. You have this character who we meet and immediately speaks in his voice, in this internal monologue, this soliloquy. We have this dramatic scenario where he's heading off to do something. We don't know what it is at the start, but we know he's reluctant to go. We have this very bleak world where the sky is like a patient etherized upon a table, where you have, these cheap hotels and sawdust restaurants and stacks of oyster shells and, images of consumption without meaning. And then you have the reference to human greatness. Michelangelo contrasted with what most of us do: come and go and talk and really achieve very little else. So that's the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock analysis, part 1. I'm going to just stop the video now and just start it up again. I'm going to get through most of this today. But again, you'll watch it in little chunks. Hopefully you found that in some way useful.